we're going to start with our all-star baseball panel, who's previewing the All-Star Game. DraftKings contributors Garion Thorne, Nick Friar, and Matt Meiselman. Guys, before you hit me with your strategy and picks, one very important thing to note. Shohei Ohtani is starting for the American League, but he can only be drafted as a hitter for this contest. Hear me now. He will not accrue any pitching fantasy points. Okay, now that we've got that one out of the way, Garion, what's your strategy for playing an all-star showdown? Because as the name suggests, everyone is an all-star.
Yeah, this is definitely the most unique slate you're going to get from a showdown sense all season. The most players, some of the more tantalizing salaries, to be perfectly honest. But I think, to me, the two things that stand out, and, you know, as we kind of answer these questions, that will become more apparent, is I think you need to exploit two categories of player. You need to exploit the guys who the fans want to see and will probably be rewarded as such. These are guys like Shohei Ohtani, like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who were very high in the fan voting and are also hitting very high in their lineups. Maybe those are the guys who have the chance, at least the chance, to get 3 plate appearances in this game. And just saying that's the high watermark. No one's getting a 4th at bat in the All-Star Game. The other area that might be a little misrepresented and undervalued is the pitching. Yes, we know that no one's going to go more than 2 innings. It's very likely that no one aside from Max Scherzer is going to pitch 2 innings in this game. And that's even somewhat questionable. But when you've got guys you know are going to get into the game and have high strikeout rates, like a Josh Hader or like even someone like Chapman, I think you have to take advantage of that fact because they're going to fill the late innings of this game. They're going to pitch in the game, and high floors might mean more than high ceilings in this contest.
All right. Yeah. Nick, what's your take here?
So I am not as interested in the unknown when it comes to pitching. And I do understand Garion's logic when it comes to relief pitchers. We're probably going to see all of those guys, if not most of them. But I don't know exactly which ones we're going to be able to go with here. Max Scherzer and Shohei Ohtani are the only guarantees on the mound tonight. I would think we'll see Gibson and Lance Lynn too, given how well they've done. If I was going to go with a pitcher, it would be Scherzer. But I'm right now tonight, I'm not taking any part in the pitching. Obviously, you got to stick with the starters when it comes to offense as well. I personally, as much as Vladdy G and Shohei are guys who people are going to be focused in on, I'm kind of more interested in the guys who, have something to prove. Those first-time guys, and there are some, big guys who've done really well this season. Of course, they're all-stars, but have really stood out that I feel like, got a little disrespected where they're put in the lineup tonight. And those are the guys, as much as they might only get 2 at-bats, I still think that we're going to get a good shot from them tonight. So those are the guys I'm targeting.
All right. Who are you going to be targeting here, Matt?
So to start with, this All-Star Game seems unusual to me for 2 key reasons. I think one is what you mentioned with Shohei Ohtani. But I think the key variable to look at for him when building lineups is the fact that he's occupying 2 starting spots for the American League, which means that there's an extra bench player for the American League. So the NL actually has 1 less bench hitter as a result of this. So that means there's less competition for playing time on the NL side. So I'm looking towards the National League bench for hitting more so than the American League. But to Garion's point, I think he had said there's no starting hitter that will get 4 at-bats. I think that that's definitely true, but I do think a bench hitter could end up getting a bunch of at-bats because this is Coors Field, and even if the first few innings are low scoring with the better pitchers going early, we could have an explosion of runs later in the game, and then there's no more bench hitters after the bench to come in. So I'm looking at the National League bench. I'm looking at both benches for offense because if this game starts slow and then there's a ton of offense late, you could get 4 or 5 at-bats or 4 or 5 times through the lineup for guys on the benches as the game picks up more scoring later on.
All right. So, Nick, who are you going to captain in this game?
So when I'm talking about guys that get disrespected, the first person that I look at is Jesse Winker over in the National League. He's batting, I think he was batting 6th in the lineup tonight, right behind Castellanos. And it's okay. This guy's been outstanding this season. I know the other guys have, but I just feel like when we're talking about big nights, yes, you have Fernando Tatis Jr. and everything, but obviously Acuna is not playing. But Jesse Winker has had some of the biggest games of the season of any hitter. So I don't know. I was kind of surprised to see him down there. I get the brand recognition and everything. But of course, he's got a 395 WOBA, 992 OPS. Most of the AL's pitching staff is made up of righties where he has most of his success. So that's the guy I'm going with at 10.2K.
All right, Matt, who are you going to be going with as your captain?
So there's two main guys I'm interested in. I think Manny Machado and Juan Soto coming off the bench are just, they probably will go a little bit overlooked because the green check mark for the starting lineup is just, it plays a role. And we've seen bench hitters do just fine in all-star games. So if the starters get a couple of bats, the bench gets a couple of bats. I'm a little worried Soto might be tired after the home run derby, and he looked tired towards the end of the home run derby. But I think those guys, if I have to pick a starter, I definitely have no issue with Tatis or Vlad. I mean, there's a lot of great players in the All-Star game. But I think going with, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Manny Machado is my guy.
All right, Garion, who are you going to go with for your captain?
So I think where I'm going to go here, and I know these guys have kind of laid out a couple value options, and there are value options you can stick at captain if you want a more balanced approach. But I think with the amount of value you can find in pitching, you can probably stick one of those top tier guys in your captain spot. And I think the guy to target is probably Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who, Nick talked about, guys wanted to get it done in their first All-Star game and sort of said like, Ohtani and Vlad, whatever. But it's also their first All-Star game. Like, I think they want to prove something. And again, I do think it matters when you're the leading vote getter. I think the managers know that, they understand that, and they're going to say, hey, we have to showcase these guys. And I think for Guerrero in particular, he's kind of underpriced. He's only the sixth most expensive guy on the slate, despite the fact he leads the league in batting average and OPS plus and WRC plus and WOBA. He's hitting second in this lineup. So again, even if he only plays 5 innings, I think there's a realistic chance he gets 3 plate appearances. And I mean, if we want to play the small stats game, which you can if you want to in the All-Star game, he also has 2 home runs off of Max Scherzer so far this season. So I think it's a relatively good matchup in the first inning. And like I said, I think he gets 3 plate appearances, which to me is the golden number.
All right, Matt, talk to me about a stack that you're going to be looking at.
So, yeah, like I said, I think the stack is the bench of the National League, as weird as that sounds, just because I think there's a chance for those guys to get a bunch of extra plate appearances. So that's kind of where I'm looking. Stacking is weird in the All-Star game because if you stack a team, you may be looking at players that aren't in the lineup at the same time as each other. So I feel like the stack is one of 4 things, either of the starters for the American League, bench for the American League, starters for the National League, bench for the National League. It's almost like there are 4 teams playing. So I'm looking to the NL reserves for my stack.
All right, Gary, and what about you? Where are you looking for your stack?
Yeah, again, you have to kind of augment the term stack here from what we normally understand it to be. But I think you can look at small parts of each lineup. And one part that really screams value to me is the 2-3 slot in the National League. You've got Max Muncy, who's incredibly cheap at just $5,800. And then you have Nolan Arenado at just $6,600 hitting third. I was a little surprised to see Arenado was hitting third in this game. But, you've got 2 guys hitting back-to-back. There's the potential to have some counting stats bounce off each other. And I do think you get 2 sets of these guys coming to the plate in tandem. So again, I wouldn't start stacking like the first 4 guys in the batting order. It's probably not feasible to do by salary anyway, but you can maybe take these like 2 or 3 man sections of the lineup and try to trot it out that way.
Yeah, Nick, how are you going to be doing it?
Well, I'm surprised Garion isn't interested in the possible Blue Jays stack that we got tonight with Salvador Perez pincered in between the 2 of them because, I mean, that's his team, right? But I like Teoscar Hernandez tonight and Marcus Semien. When you look at their DK fantasy production throughout the season, Semien is number 3 on this list among all the hitters, only behind Vladdy G and Fernando Tatis Jr. So those, and you can still fit in Vladdy G in your lineup as well, whether you're looking at as a captain or as a utility guy. But I like these 2 at the bottom of the American League lineup, and I'm going to go with them as my stack.
Okay. All right. How about value, guys? We got to talk about value here. It is the All-Star game, but we said there's some enticing salaries here. Garion, where are you looking for yours?
So again, I think the National League pitching staff in particular, just because there's so many high strikeout rate options. And there's also, not to drill this point home, but I think Nick brought it up and it's very important, especially this season where we saw like the entire Astros team just be like, nah, I'm good. And we've had a bunch of pitchers and players just kind of go, yeah, I don't really need to go to the All-Star game this year. I think there is going to be an importance on using guys who actually want to be here and actually want to play. And generally speaking, that means first-time All-Stars. Guys who, maybe they think they might not get back to this game and they have to fully utilize this opportunity. And you've got that across the board, really, in the National League pitching staff, aside from Max Scherzer. Like, I think you're going to see Corbin Burns pitch in this game. I think you're going to see Zach Wheeler pitch in this game. Both of those guys also on full rest. So it's not like their managers are calling up the NL squad saying, hey, maybe don't put these guys in the game. I think they're clear. They're only $4,800 each. They both have ridiculous strikeout rates so far this season. Even Freddie Peralta, another first-time All-Star, crazy high strikeout rate. Like, really, when you're talking about using a pitcher in this game, the hope is you can get 2 strikeouts in an inning. That's kind of that's the best thing you can hope for. So all of these guys have the potential to do that. I think you're definitely going to see all 3 of these guys pitch early on in this game, and that's really all you can ask for.
Nick, you look like you're picking up what Garion's putting down.
Yeah, I like his logic with this for sure. I just, I'm apprehensive still when it comes to pitching. I would have liked to have seen Wheeler or Burns maybe start the game this year, and that maybe would have changed my perspective, as much as I think Max Scherzer is going to do fine tonight. But if I'm looking for value, the guy who I'm going to go with is the number 9 hitter in the National League lineup. I'm going with Brian Reynolds. And again, I know there's concern how many times he's going to come up to the plate, but this is a guy who was not supposed to be a starter. I cannot believe that I'm talking to you about the Pirates having 2 starters in the lineup this year. What are they, 34 and 56 going into the All-Star break? Absolutely brutal. But Brian Reynolds, this is a guy who, as much as he's been good, good switch hitter, so no issues with matchups or anything like that. I cannot believe that we're seeing a second Pirates bat in the starting lineup tonight. So I'm going to go with this guy at 4K, the minimum price and everything for my value bat.
Matt, who do you like for value?
So I think it makes sense that the pitchers are underpriced, but this is Coors Field, and the over-under for this game is a couple runs higher than what we normally see in an All-Star game. So while the pitchers are cheap enough that if they get a couple strikeouts, they probably make the winning lineup, there's so much downside for the pitchers too. So I think there is upside, but there's also risk there. So I'm not really that interested in pitching. I think the most obvious value play in this game is Max Muncy. Garion mentioned before, he's 5,800 batting second. So he's well underpriced, and it's a positive platoon split for him too. He gets at least one at bat. I mean, he'll get one at bat against Shohei Ohtani. Not sure who will be in second, but Muncy is too good of a power hitter to be that cheap batting second at Coors Field when everyone around him is more expensive. So I think he's the clear value play in my eyes.
All right, let's talk about a fade. Nick, someone you're actively avoiding here.
Yeah, and that's going to be Shohei Ohtani tonight, because as much as I think he could end up being, amped after the disappointment from last night, losing in that double OT battle against Juan Soto in the first round, I also think you're running into risk that maybe he's going to be exhausted after last night. He's dealing with and I know we're worried about his hitting more than his pitching, and he's going to be hitting first, so that does play a factor in the decision-making process. But still, I feel like he's too much of a risk right now, and then we're going to be talking about him a little bit when we get to the sportsbook stuff too, but right now I'm fading Ohtani.
Matt, what do you think? Who are you going to actively avoid?
So I could go with someone else, but I think Ohtani is the right call here. Like I'm totally on board with that. I think there's a better chance that Ohtani only gets 2 plate appearances than, let's say, Vlad Guerrero Jr. or Fernando Tatis, because 1, Ohtani was in the home run derby last night, and 2, he's also pitching in this game. So I think for sure he gets a second at bat, but it seems like it would be unfair for the managerial staff to want to push Ohtani 3 times to the plate when it's like the Angels will not be happy to see that going on, to have their star of their team now with Mike Trout hurt, their budding superstar in the game for longer than probably what he should be. So I think Ohtani only bats twice because he's pitching and also the fatigue of yesterday. And I also think he probably will be. He may not be the highest owned player in this game, but he'll be up there. I mean, it could be Vlad, it could be Tatis, it could be Scherzer, but Shohei Ohtani's ownership in tournaments should be very, very high. So yes, he could hit a home run off Scherzer on the first pitch of the game, and that would be tough if you don't have him. But I do think he's the right call as the fade.
Garion, these guys are out on Shohei. What about you?
Yeah, I would say the easiest fade for me would just be Trey Turner, whose price point doesn't make a lot of sense. I understand that there's a very likely scenario he plays just as long as any of the starters end up playing, especially considering the National League roster only actually has 1 other natural shortstop. However, that other natural shortstop is Fernando Tatis Jr. And I think, again, in my mind, especially this season where baseball is really trying to push its young stars, I have a hard time believing Tatis isn't going to get 3 plate appearances in this game, which Turner probably takes over for Tatis, bats in the leadoff spot for the rest of the game, but that could still only mean 2 plate appearances for someone who, for whatever reason, is $9,600 in a game where I also doubt he's looking to steal many bases. I think Matt was right in the sense that you definitely could end up getting more volume from the bench pieces because this game could go to extras. We have seen a lot of All-Star games go to extra innings, like a weird amount. However, I would say with the high total in this game, the likelihood of it being a tie does get a little bit more skewed. So I think you're looking at probably 2 plate appearances for Trey Turner, and that's just not enough at this price point.